This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Straczynski. On today's show, what does WBD consider a success for Collision, as well as this AEW original ended up leaving AEW? What's going on with all of that? We're going to have the lowdown on that, as well as some major changes coming to AEW and its creative. Of course, we're going to have the lowdown on what's going on with the SummerSlam card. We've got a little intel on that. We're going to take a look at AEW. We're going to take a look at WWE. We're going to go around the world with all of it. Doing it with me, as always, is the one, the only. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
Well, the blessing is no banned words here at the podcast. We're allowed to say whatever we want in however manner we need to. And it was a good week of wrestling. I enjoyed starting with Monday Night Raw, looking at Dynamite and how unique they put together that show. MJF, a gamer? It was so crazy to see what the hell's been going on in the world of wrestling. And then SmackDown, I thought, was real interesting in the way in which that kind of show was put together. So I'm excited, and now we're starting to see a little bit of what can happen at SummerSlam. And I just can't get over the fact that LA Knight is getting more popular by the week. And I just thought that he needed a little bit more time in his promo. I felt like giving him 3-4 minutes was not enough, especially given how popular he was. Maybe he was featured in the dark match because I didn't really pay attention to what happened after SmackDown. But my God, the crowd was into it. He timed it perfectly with the Yaz. Man, it's great to see a new emerging superstar doing his thing. And WWE's done a real good job this summer, at least at keeping everybody's interest in the storylines that they have put out there.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think part of this comes from them actually having factions. If you look, having a faction really benefits your television product because you have multiple angles and you have multiple people working different sides of a program. And you've seen this on Raw specifically. Raw specifically has the Judgment Day. Everybody in the Judgment Day has a little something going on here and there. So it's a way to get everybody on screen at one time. You can kind of break up their story a little bit. And it's a really neat way to kind of fill anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. Sticking with Raw in factions, you do have Imperium. And it does feel like after this week on Raw, Imperium could go from a trio to a duo minus Giovanni Vinci. He might be on the outs with Gunther and Ludwig Kaiser. Do you think them going from a trio to a duo would be the best thing for this group and for the individuals in this group? Because I think you could make a case, if you really wanted to, that Giovanni Vinci could go off to be a singles wrestler, could go off to be by himself. You do see Ludwig Kaiser more with Gunther than you do Giovanni Vinci. Ludwig Kaiser does the whole pull the coat off and swirl it around thing. It seems as though Ludwig and Gunther are kind of attached at the hip. The odd man out could be a Giovanni, and you could go and do something different with him. Would it be best for the group, though, I think is what's most important, because you and I are both huge fans of Imperium. You and I both are huge fans of the trio in Imperium. Does Giovanni Vinci get over by himself, and does the group continue to succeed without him? I think that might be the issue. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, exactly. I think here's the tough part is that they've been put in tag team matches, but I don't think that they're ready yet to kind of branch off and do their own thing. So you'd have to kind of have that be done. More work needs to be done to get them a little bit over. Gunther's the star, and he gives them the rub, and he's been the focus so much that those two kind of are more of a role players. And you would have needed to do a little bit more, like in some of those tag matches. Like obviously, when they were feuding with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, they were okay, but really didn't do a whole heck of a lot to make you believe that, hey, it reminds me of the back in the day, like the Killer Bees. Like they were cool, but that you never believed that they were going to be on the level of a Demolition or the Rockers or anything like that, like a mid-level tag team, but below. So it's something that you look at and you say, I would just keep them together and have them continue to evolve. And you don't want to kind of, I hate to say it, you don't want to have them end up like Gallows and Anderson, where they're there, but when they show up on screen, you're just like, well, okay. They haven't been impactful, and they haven't been really taking advantage of the rub, and they haven't been given anything serious to be able to chomp into. And it's disappointing at the highest level, because those 4 individuals are really supremely talented and can do their own thing. So I am curious to see how they are going to evolve with this, because Gunther's on another level, and it's time for him to do his own thing.
I think what you said there, using the comparison of Gallows and Anderson, it really does feel like they were like, AJ Styles, we want to make you a leader of a stable. So we're going to give you these 2 guys that you know. And those 2 guys are just kind of there. They're just like background guys. Like, you could take cardboard cutouts and put them behind AJ Styles. You're going to get the same thing out of those guys that you're getting out of Gallows and Anderson. That you're not getting really anything from them. I think you have a real opportunity here with Imperium, because all these guys are unique in their own way. And like you said, Gunther's on another level. So they get a bit of a rub from Gunther. You can do something special with these guys. I don't know if breaking them up right now is the best idea. I think you need to keep them together. And I don't understand why WWE always has this trope with breaking up their tag teams or breaking up their factions. Just let these guys go out there and do things. In the one case where I think it's absolutely different, where they never broke anybody up, was the Usos. And right now we do have Jey Uso kind of going off on his own, but you never seen the Usos get broke up. You know, I think you need to leave Imperium together, let them continue to let Ludwig Kaiser and let Giovanni Vinci continue to grow, let Gunther continue to knock stuff out of the park, and you can kind of reevaluate this in maybe 6 months. We'll kind of see where we go. But like I was saying, the one group where they never actually broke them up, and it was never really a thought, was the Usos. And now we're getting Jey Uso on his own. It seems as though Jimmy Uso has been written off of television, and now you're going to get main event Jey Uso. Is Jey Uso main event caliber? This week we did get to see him come out, and basically he carried the opening of the 9 o'clock hour. He came out, cut a promo. You had Paul Heyman come down. You had Solo Sikoa come down. Solo got on the microphone, which was a little bit weird. I don't think we've heard Solo talk once yet. So Solo gets on the microphone, and next thing you know, it's just a bloodbath. It's just a beatdown. You have Jey Uso beating up Paul Heyman, beating up Solo Sikoa, using ladders or using chairs in the mayhem. Is Jey Uso a main event player? And does this little back and forth that we had this week leading up to next week, where he's supposed to confront Roman Reigns, does this have you buying into him more? Does he get you more invested? And do you believe he's on that level like a guy like Roman Reigns?
See, here's the problem, and I know I'm supposed to be into it, but you know, Kenny, our guy at TV Chips on Twitter, really kind of talked about it, saying like, look, this is kind of where it's going to go. It's going to end up always being Jey Uso versus Roman Reigns, and I was like, I don't know if I was in denial. I'm like, I don't really like that. It's just. And it probably speaks to just how well and ingrained I viewed the Usos as a tag team. And you got to remember that during the era of COVID and the Thunderdome, they had this trope already. They had Jey Uso in a main event against Roman, and they've had him fight off and have this feud already. And I now know that they've circled back to it and are telling the story in a different way. But for me, I just don't think that, for me personally, and it doesn't speak to everybody else, but for me, I don't view Jey Uso as a main eventer, as a guy that can stand in the ring and carry a segment and do all of that. Not like a Kevin Owens, not like a Sami Zayn, who started off as singles performers and then have now been formed. The Usos are a tag team. It's just, for me, not enough to say that, okay, look, Jey Uso's like, some people that you talk to say, oh yeah, Jey's going to be the guy. That would be the ultimate shock if you had Jey actually beat Roman Reigns. But my mind would be blown away if in SummerSlam at the end of the show, Jey Uso is holding up the belt. It would be the ultimate family love. It would be the ultimate passing of the torch. It would probably be an interesting story, but I can't wrap my mind around that. My jaw would be dropped if that happened. I think Solo's more impactful than Jey Uso. I felt like when you have it, it felt like Solo's the bigger star in my mind. So I don't know. I don't see it because I don't envision. I envision Roman getting over here and finding new ways to take the bloodline to the next level. It would be crazy. It might be the story of the year if Jey Uso is the undisputed Universal Champion, but it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right in any way. I like the segment and how it played out, with Paul Heyman and getting worked and then Solo talking, but his voice kind of had a little bit too much of a high pitch that I probably maybe would not have had him talk just yet. But for me, I don't know how you continue to evolve Jey Uso as a singles guy. They're doing it, getting the rub off of Roman, but for me, I just don't believe it as much.
I think in the end, he goes back to being a tag team wrestler. I think this is kind of a one-off deal. Do I buy him as a main event guy, as a singles competitor? I do. I don't buy him as the guy who's going to dethrone Roman. I feel like you've built Roman up to be this insurmountable mountain, and we kind of know that Roman's time is coming at WrestleMania, at the next WrestleMania. So from that perspective, no, I don't buy that. But that being said, I didn't necessarily think that the Usos were going to beat Roman and Solo in the last pay-per-view when they pinned them. I didn't think that was going to happen, but it did.
Let me ask you this.
So could they throw us a curveball? They could.
Yeah, let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you know how they keep saying, teasing that Jay's going to be the next leader, and how we all think that, okay, if Roman's going to win at SummerSlam, then he'll have new members. The way you do it, I think, is if you want to be creative, is you have Jay recruit all the new members, all the Fatus from NXT, the up-and-comer. They support Jay. They say, hey, Roman, you've taken this to a level that we don't want. We have honor and respect, and you're all about ego. And then you have Roman go on his own and do his own thing, and the Usos run their own little faction, maybe not calling it the Tribal Chief, but I think maybe if you want to do it in a creative way and shock everybody, all the new members join Jay.
That could be interesting. Like, I never even thought about doing something like that. But here's the thing. I think from a writing standpoint, you kind of booked yourself into a weird spot because you wrote Jay off of TV. So I don't know if I guess you could have, in the meantime, while Jay's off of TV, he's out recruiting. You could do something along those lines. Look, they've retconned stuff before, but I get what you're saying, and I don't mind that. I kind of like that. I think for story purposes and for where we're at, this all makes sense. I think Jey Uso can be on a level with Roman Reigns. I think Jey Uso can carry a segment with Roman Reigns. I think he's good enough in the ring. I think he's great on the mic. So he can do these things. He can build the match. I think the beatdown of Paul Heyman and Solo, I don't know if it got me more invested, but it added another layer. And this is something that we've talked about each and every week. It just kind of this whole story, this whole bloodline story is just layer stacked on layer, stacked on layer, stacked on layer. And this is just kind of another brushstroke with the paintbrush added to it. And it's just to kind of fill more stuff in. And this part of the storyline, like what we're talking about that took place on Friday night, felt like it was a little bit of filler, but I didn't mind the filler. This filler was okay. This felt like this was like a double helping of mashed potatoes. You like mashed potatoes. You love mashed potatoes. So you get a little bit more. It's okay. That's what this felt like. This wasn't the steak, or this wasn't the meatloaf that you were getting with your mashed potatoes. But this was like another extra helping of mashed potatoes, and I'm okay with that. So I don't know if it necessarily got me more interest or more invested. It kept me interested. And I like seeing the physicality from Jey Uso on his brother and on Paul Heyman, because remember, Jey has this relationship that has a lot of animosity between him and Paul Heyman. This is a way for him to get it out. I like that. I think that's a really nice touch. Something that I didn't see coming, and a guy that we haven't seen in a while, somebody else who was written off TV. Bobby Lashley made an appearance on SmackDown. How do you feel about Bobby Lashley teasing maybe starting a faction with the Street Profits? Do you maybe see us getting a revamped Hurt Business in the fold here? And are the Street Profits part of that? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings on this? Because the moment I seen that Escalade pull up, and I was like, could be Bobby Lashley, and it was Bobby Lashley. And then the Street Profits jumped into the vehicle with him, and I was like, oh crap, we could be getting a redo of the Hurt Business, and Bobby Lashley gets his own actual faction. What are your feelings on this? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's real.
I was
good.
excited.
Yeah, I was too. It was real good for the good for the Street Profits. I thought that the look that Bobby had was real badass, all black and everything. But the Street Profits always gotta. I like what they've done, and probably they plateaued with what they were doing, and maybe this is the way in which the split does happen if Bobby and other members kick him out if he gets too big for his britches or whatever. However it's going to play out, it's going to be a unique story with how they handle everything. And I'm happy for Dawkins because I think he needs to do a little bit more, revamp the Street Profit looks. And if you go a little bit harder with the Street Profits and a little bit less gimmicky, I think it's going to bode well for them. And it's going to be a very interesting opportunity for them to see how this goes. And it's always good when a character takes time off, and Bobby Lashley, and comes back and hopefully has an opportunity to take another step forward, because he's a badass dude, but he's just always kind of been right there in the middle and needs a little bit more shine, and maybe this will be the opportunity he gets to get really white hot.
Yeah, he looked like $1 million on Friday night. I thought he looked amazing. So I think this could bode really well for him, especially if you keep MVP as the mouthpiece, right? Like Bobby Lashley's big weakness is cutting promos. He's not the best. I think his look, though, he's so damn intimidating, and he looks so good when you put him in a suit. Like,
yes,
this guy has the face, has the body, like he has the look. And then you put the guys like the Street Profits, those guys look great in suits. Those guys have good bodies. Like it all works. On top of it, those guys can cut promos. Like you could have something really, really special here. It could be really awesome. So I'm interested to see where this is going. It's good to see Bobby Lashley back. I'm kind of pumped up about it. I want to get your take because you touched on it early, man. You brought it up. You brought up LA Knight. LA Knight has been trending basically all week long. LA Knight is one of the hottest guys in wrestling. I was actually telling Alyssa on Friday night. I was like, this is so awesome. I'm so excited for this guy because this is a guy who's really worked his butt off everywhere he's been. I was a huge fan of him when he was in TNA/Impact, and they just had no idea what to do with him. And he's here in WWE, and he's killing it, and he's doing a great job. He's doing such a good job with his heel gimmick that WWE sees no other option because of the crowd reaction but to eventually turn this guy babyface. At least that's the rumor. And you kind of got to see a little bit of this with his promo that he cut on Friday night. I'll be honest with you. I think he wasn't prepared for that type of reaction. That crowd was absolutely bananas. I think he was shocked. I think if he was ready for that, he probably would have paused maybe another minute or two and just kind of let the crowd have their own moment with him. And then he would have started to cut his promo. And if you look at his promo, very similar to how this show started, just a little bit rough and bumpy. I was a little bit rough and bumpy with how we were kind of setting things up here. So he did the same thing. He was a little bit rough and bumpy, but in the end, he got it all out. It was still great. Worked in his Yaz, worked in his Let Me Talk to You, and it was fantastic. How do you feel about LA Knight becoming a babyface? Where are you at with this?
Yeah, what's wrong? You, Charlotte, and LA Knight all tripping up on your words? I think
Look, man, I was shaking the sleep off, I think. I don't know. It was a rough couple of minutes to start. My bad.
No, it's all good. But I think with LA Knight, dude, he was pressed up against the main event. So I don't think he could have sat there for a minute. He would have got his ass chewed out. I think it was in and out, get your shit out and go back to your business. But it was good. I listen, LA Knight's popular. He's over. And all the stuff that he's done now working with the team to enhance what he's got. I thought it was great to say, hey, LA Knight's been everywhere, which has been the meme all over the internet this week. LA Knight's taking advantage of his opportunity. And look, it's not going to be new to him. He's been in high-profile matches. He's done the circuit. He's had in various incarnations. And look, the Let Me Talk to You has been brought over from Impact. Remember, this guy had a whole career and a bunch of great feuds at Impact. He did podcasts. He did a bunch of things. And then he just went now into the WWE system and earned his opportunity. Look, the cream always rises to the top. And a guy like Eli Drake, LA Knight, is always going to be somebody that takes advantage. And he's got the experience. And I just think that people gravitate toward the natural charisma that he's got because he's good on the mic, he's believable, and he has tapped into some of the nostalgia with former performers that have been at the highest level of the company. So people want to like LA Knight, and he's cool. He's a good dude, and he'll take advantage of it in a positive way. Now you have to have it where he wins the U.S. Title qualifying situation, so that it would be great to see. If you don't give us a title change in the big event with Jey Uso, LA Knight winning will blow off Ford Field, and that's something I want.
Yeah.
That's something I want. LA Knight beat Theory, win the U.S. title. I'll be okay with that if that's one of the only big things that ends up shaking out. Because Cody and Brock is cool. I'm down for the entrances, but in terms of the big things that you obviously would want, I would have wanted Cody and Roman and Cody to win it. But I will say debuts, surprises, and LA Knight getting the Ford Field crowd to pop, it's probably well-deserved, and I hope that that's the case. But you never know. You just never know. I'm just going to say that maybe I'll tell myself it won't happen, so I won't be disappointed. But at least we'll have the pop at Ford Field when he comes out. Because the dude's over, and he knows how to handle the mic, and now he's taking the advantage of the writers and the WWE platform to shine his light and to handle his business. So let's hope they take advantage of it on SmackDown every single week. He needs more time, baby. Give him 5 minutes.
Did you see the video from, I think it was 2014, where he was in the Performance Center and he was doing a workout video with Triple H, and somehow he worked his into that?
Exactly.
9 years ago.
But what caught my attention
How great is that?
Was Triple H's outfit. I was like, what the hell? You can't be looking like that in a workout video. He should have just been like in black tights. Like, I don't want to see Triple H in fluorescence being like up, down. Like, no. Like, I literally, if I was good with the company, I would definitely screenshot that and post it all over the doors and be like, which motherfucker put that? You know what I mean? Blow up. Be like, look at this. The boss of the company is in fluorescence trying to do up downs. So like, get the hell out of here with that.
I thought it was cool. I thought it was fun. Something else that I thought was fun, and it multiple times this week, it had me saying out loud, "This is dumb, but this is what makes wrestling special." I said it at least 3 times watching Dynamite this week. I thought this was one of the more fun episodes of Dynamite that we have had in a long time. I thought it was silly at certain points. At times, it was a wrestling show that did not take itself too seriously. And again, this is kind of what makes wrestling wrestling. This is what we tune into. We tune in to be entertained. We tune in for that physical balance, and we tune in for that comedic balance, and kind of holding up all of that. AEW has stumbled upon something with the bromance between MJF and Adam Cole. Like, this was an accidental happen chance. And I think at some point you're going to have to deviate from your originally scheduled program with these guys, because this is over. And each and every week I get more and more into this. On this week's episode, you've seen basically MJF go off and take care of 4 women when they were at the bar together, which I thought was funny, and it was a little bit dark humor. You had these 2 guys playing video games, playing Fight Forever, and they became best friends essentially doing that. Then they had a match in the ring where they keep trying to work on this double clothesline as a finishing move, and they just kind of keep failing. I think it's setting up for the winner of this tag team tournament. Are you getting more and more sucked into this? Is this something that is becoming much more fun for you to watch? Because I think when this first started, you were kind of like, all right, what are we doing here? And I think the more and more this has gone on, I'm like, yeah, let's keep this going. I'm loving this. Where are you at on all of this?
Yeah, it's obviously something maybe to set up how it'll be interesting to see how maybe MJF will turn on Adam Cole or what pisses him off. But it's good to showcase MJF in a variety of ways and in some kind of way getting a rub off of Adam Cole's personality. And that's how you really, in the end, the entertainment part of the company needs to step it up, and now they've done that. Because look, you have wrestlers, and everyone knows, chokeholds and brutal moves and psychology. But what makes people gravitate toward a show is entertainment. Make me laugh, make me giggle a little bit, make me go, what the hell are these guys doing? them taking shots together was funny because MJF is just a guy that, is like the hard ass trying to be silly, and it just comes off as funny and something that you want to see every week as to how they can potentially showcase MJF a little bit more in an entertaining light. And look, Adam Cole too is getting the benefit as well as, having these. And what did we say several months back? The use of TV time doesn't always have to be promos. It can be vignettes. It can be stories. Similar to the APA playing poker with the fake door that was, cut out into the back set, and someone had to go through it. And when they would come right up to the performer, the APA would be like, "What are you doing? Why don't you come through the door?" And then the other character would be like, "Huh?" And he'd have to walk through the door that was obviously propped up. And it was funny. It was good. It made Bradshaw and Farouk one of the baddest dudes on the planet, and it was great. And Ron Simmons got to take advantage of establishing a line that he still uses today. So I love it. I thought that, the opportunity now for these two, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, and whatever happens will be, but it's helping the company and keeping the eyes on there. It's something that you want to watch and look at, and it's something that will evolve into a storyline that will pay off in the ring eventually. So kudos to the production of these of the story now they're telling with the bromance between MJF and Adam Cole.
Yeah, look, I think this is one of those things where it really kind of shows all the levels that MJF can go to. Like, MJF can be incredibly serious, can be a total dick, can play a bit of a baby face. Like, we've seen it with the CM Punk run. And now you get this comedic aspect. MJF, I feel like, is so underrated. He is usually, especially in our group chat with Kenny. Kenny hates MJF. MJF has so many layers and has so much talent, and he can go to so many different places and be such a different character. And you're seeing some of his comedic skill right now, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. This kind of leads to a bit of a setup, this relationship that they've got going on. Who's going to turn on who? If you were writing this, who would you have turn on who? Would you have MJF turn on Adam Cole, or would you have Adam Cole turn on MJF?
No, you always have MJF turn. He's the natural heel, and it plays into the fact that he's a snake. And I don't think that right now MJF is ready for a full-on face run. I just don't think that that's the case for a long time. So I think you handle what you need to handle and do what you got to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. I could see it kind of going both ways. I think it'd be more shocking if you had Adam Cole be the guy who was doing the turning, but I totally get what you're saying. Now, we figured out who the surprise fifth members are for Blood and Guts. Blood and Guts is next week. We now know who's going to take up what side. Pac was the big surprise fifth member for the BCC. We thought it was Jericho. They did a really nice job getting us going down this Jericho route, but it is Pac who's going to be the fifth member. Was this the right call? We already knew it was going to be Kota Ibushi. Was this the right call? Was Pac the right call to be the fifth member?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think he fits in well. Can be violent, can handle business, and I think that that's a great opportunity for Pac to get his shit in when he gets the opportunity to get in the ring. I think it's great. It's just weird too, the best way to put it is AEW in totality has a lovely roster, but they got to do a lot more with that roster. I'm talking about at least 60% more with House of Black, with Miro, with CM Punk, with FTR. It just feels like they're doing it light, and you need to do more, a lot more in regards to, look, Pac is a guy that can have classic matches and great storylines. They need to invest more in the production, and Tony needs to say, look, maybe take a little bit more reins off of it and pinch somebody from WWE that's into character development and handle business, because there's a bunch of talent, but it's not being you can't have a roster full of talent that 60% of them are not over in regards to the storylines, and then you go, oh, Pac, yeah, he's great, and yeah, he's now going to get the rub, but he should have been already getting in the rub. He should already be further along when he's in AEW. So that's what they got to invest in the next couple of years, is develop these characters into beyond just mid-carders. And Pac's going to do great. He's going to be a nice addition to this match.
Yeah, look, I've always been impressed with Pac. I think Pac brings a sense of physicality, a sense of realism, a sense of grit when he's in the ring. I think he is a fantastic addition. I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. This makes sense because Pac and Kenny Omega have history. So this totally makes sense. This works. I think the one thing that did not work in this segment was the way that they were trying to introduce Kota Ibushi. You mean to tell me that you've got Kenny Omega's head laid up between a chair and a video package is going to stop you from beating him down when you've got one of the most violent matches coming up? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Now, I guess the story goes that Kota Ibushi showed up at the airport and Kenny Omega could not find him. They got lost. They could not figure out where each other were. And so what they did instead was they did that weird video package. That's what is being reported. So I guess you get it because things happen. But for me, you needed to change how you went about this. You needed to change how you introduced Kota Ibushi. If you are, and this is again what AEW I think falters with. AEW knows that it has a smart wrestling fan base, and it loves to cater to a smart wrestling fan base. Well, what about the casual viewer? What about the viewer who doesn't necessarily watch New Japan? What about the viewer who doesn't necessarily know Kenny Omega's history? What about the viewer who's just turning this on at the very, very end because they know this is where the main event is, and they just want to see and give wrestling a shot? If this is what they were turning on, they would end up leaving being like, what's the big deal? Who's this guy? Why is he important? Why did those guys stop beating that other guy down when they had his head in a steel chair? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, this, the way this was done was bad. It was very, very poor. You need to do a better job, especially with wrestlers coming from New Japan. You have to do a better job of introducing that character. You need to do a better job of telling a little bit of their backstory and getting people ingratiated with them and getting them ingratiated with the people. Instead of just saying, Kota Ibushi's here, and then everybody's supposed to kind of know who that is. If you're a casual wrestling fan, you don't know who that is. Again, I was watching this. I had to explain who Kota Ibushi was to my girlfriend. She is somebody who recently picked up wrestling. Like, over the last 2-3 years, she's really gotten into it. That being said, we don't watch a ton of New Japan. I watch a lot of the New Japan that I see. I find it basically on the internet, and I watch it by myself. I'm not necessarily sitting down to watch New Japan pay-per-views with her. And I'm not sitting down to watch New Japan TV with her necessarily. So she's a little bit in the dark on who these guys are coming over from New Japan. So you got to do a lot of the filling in. That is on your commentary team. That is why you pay those 3 guys who sit there and basically argue with each other like husband and wife for 2 to 3 hours every night. That's why you pay them. Their job is to help fill those gaps in. They do a very poor job of that. AEW does a very poor job of introducing you to new wrestlers. Like the whole thing with Nick Waynes. There was a promo for Nick Waynes the week before. That was cool. Got you involved. They did a little something for Nick Waynes this week, and then he had a pretty good match with Swerve Strickland. It was a nice way to get you introduced to him. I feel like they could have did a better job of kind of filling some of that in because Nick Waynes has a pretty good history in the wrestling world, and you don't necessarily know that unless you go out and do your own research. I don't think the casual fan is doing that. I don't think the casual fan cares enough. You and I care enough because we got to come on here and we got to talk about this stuff. AEW needs to step this part of their game up because this could have been a really special segment to close what was a really good Dynamite, and I felt like they fumbled the ball at the 1-yard line. Looked like Jamal Williams trying to run the ball in and losing it and end up costing the Lions the game. That's what this was to me. This was a fumble of the highest degree, and it just goes down to basically your production. It goes down to putting your stories together. It goes down to trying to just incorporate and introduce new members. It's a botch. It's bad. I wasn't a huge fan of the way it was done. I am a huge fan of who the guys are. All right, let's fast forward to Rampage real quick. Willow Nightingale. She's going to take on Ruby Soho in the Women's Owen Hart Tournament. Who would you book to win this? You have Willow Nightingale, who's coming off her title defense where she lost the New Japan Pro Women's title. At one point, Willow Nightingale was so organically over, it was unreal. That has kind of died. Ruby Soho is in one of your more high-profiled groups. She is one of your more high-profiled wrestlers. She is back in the finals. So does she get redemption or does she lose yet again? How would you go about doing this? Because I feel like they've kind of dropped the ball with Willow Nightingale. I felt like you could have really got on Willow Nightingale and really pushed her to the moon, and yet you didn't. And Ruby Soho, I'm not sure what you want to do with her. So this is kind of a bit of an interesting time with this Women's Owen Hart tournament because you could really do something special with the winner here. You kind of seen what happened with Britt Baker. Britt Baker ends up winning it, and she ended up going on to have a pretty decent year. She ended up getting injured in that year, and that's kind of why she is where she's at right now. But Britt Baker, obviously the face of the women's division, you could really do something special here with one of these two ladies. How would you go about it, and who would you kind of pin that specialty on?
I think it would be maybe either Ruby or Willow Nightingale. I think the opportunity there to it's interesting with the faction there they got with these women led by Saraya. I think that they've been there, but it's just like they're right there before they can reach the top, and then they lose a title, or then they get the title back. It just kind of has a feel of a stop and start kind of thing, So yeah, for me personally, I'm just not all that invested in it. I just think that for me, the women are they're talented, but in regards to the interest level, there's no real okay, Saraya was good for the minute that she came back, but they've dropped the ball in regards to attention. Ruby, I think, is a perfect example like Pac. I think she's a star. But unfortunately, the early losses that she took kind of made her feel insignificant. Like, I barely even knew she was in the tournament. You know what I mean? So I think that you need to have Ruby probably win it. Willow can move on based on the stuff she's done, but I think probably my odds-on favorite would be Ruby to take it down.
I think you've missed your window with Willow. Like I said, she was so organically over, and the crowd was so into her, and you botched that. I think you just kind of put it on Ruby. You really build up the outcasts to be something special, make them feel special, so that way when they do lose, they can get somebody else over. I feel like that would probably be just best booking going forward, which really sucks because Willow Nightingale, it was brief, but man, she was white hot for probably about 3-4 weeks, and AEW just fizzled on it, just had nothing for her, did nothing with it, and it was really, really unfortunate. So just put your money in the Outcast basket and try to build that up, try to do something special with that, and we'll just kind of see where it comes from. What was your show of the week this week? What did you like? What really had your interest?
I felt SmackDown was good, but Dynamite was the show of the week. I thought the character development and the way in which it was entertaining was really solid, so I thought it was Dynamite.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I thought SmackDown was really good. I thought Raw was really carried by a couple of segments, and you could probably break those segments down into a 10-minute YouTube video. So Raw was good, just lacking a little bit. I thought Dynamite was really, really good. I thought Dynamite kept me super interested. Like I said, multiple times, I was like, this is silly, but this is what makes wrestling great. So I loved it. I'm going to give the point to Dynamite as well. You ready for some news and notes?
Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
All right, what does FIFA Women's World Cup and wrestling have in common? The answer is the Fox Network. WWE SmackDown typically airs in the United States every Friday on Fox at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but we'll have a change for the July 21st episode, with the Women's FIFA World Cup starting on July 20th and running through August 20th, 2023. Fox will be covering soccer games on the channel. This means that WWE SmackDown is going to be moving, at least temporarily, with FS1 airing the July 21st episode. Fox soccer fans, Fox will be showing the United States versus Vietnam game live at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Generally, when SmackDown, it's usually SmackDown gets moved to FS1, ratings take a bit of a hit. So if you are a ratings watcher, don't pay too much attention. For some reason, it's hard for people to find Fox Sports 1. I don't know. Switching to the Raw side of the WWE roster, last week we discussed the SummerSlam card, and we were taking a look at that, and it looks like Dave Meltzer has some stuff to say about another card being added to the match, and I don't think this one's really a surprise. Meltzer said Finn is wrestling Seth. That is for SummerSlam. Finn being protected right now. Finn's beating everyone because they've got to get Finn ready for Seth. I don't know the plan. I don't know the plan was that Finn's going over constantly because they've got to rehab him for Seth because that's at SummerSlam. I guess that makes sense. This is the only feud that those two really have going on right now. So, yeah, we're going to see Seth Rollins and Finn Balor at SummerSlam here in Detroit. Now, what does Warner Brothers Discovery consider a success for Collision? Last time we discussed if AEW could survive the low rampage-like ratings for Collision. And while a new report has revealed what Warner Brothers Discovery would consider a rating success for AEW Collision. Last month, All Elite Wrestling premiered their second 2-hour primetime show with AEW Collision on Saturday nights on TNT. Fightful Select provided an update on what Warner Brothers Discovery will consider a success, noting that Warner Brothers Discovery were much more interested in the ranking than the particular numbers. AEW Dynamite has generally drawn between 830 to 950,000 views and steadily ranks high for Wednesday nights, while AEW Rampage number has been more all over the place during viewership changes. Warner Brothers Discovery sources expect Collision to rank on Saturday the same as Dynamite on Wednesday. The report notes that the company are well aware about the fall months and will face stiff competition with college football. A top 5 ranking for the night is what Warner Brothers Discovery considers a success for AEW Collision. It'll be interesting to see how the show carries when the fall and college football rolls around, however. So basically, if they can land in the top 5 as far as ratings go, Warner Brothers will consider it a success. It doesn't matter if they draw 23,000 views, which would be absolutely horrible. As long as that is somewhere in the top 5, they're going to count that as a win. So it's kind of an interesting way to look at ratings and kind of your ratings demographics. So I think it'll work for what they want to do, because I do see this show regularly placing in the top 10. Top 5, it should be able to hold that down. It'll be interesting to see what happens when fall rolls around. Staying with AEW and Warner Brothers Discovery, AEW may start to look a little bit more like WWE due to the influence of Warner Brothers Discovery. It's being reported that it's very likely that AEW will go to the month-to-month pay-per-view mode instead of the quarterly setup that was the foundation of the company. Originally, AEW established 4 annual pay-per-view events: Revolution, Double or Nothing, All Out, and Full Gear. Later, they added a crossover event with New Japan Pro Wrestling with the Forbidden Door pay-per-view. It sounds like it's going to be more like WWE, where you have pay-per-views every single month. An AEW original has left the company. PW Insider is reporting that Brian Pillman Jr.'s AEW contract has expired, and he officially departed the country. He is the latest in a recent list of AEW contracts that have expired. Pillman joins Trench of the Moguls affiliates in Fuego del Sol. Pillman hasn't wrestled for AEW since May, not on Rampage since February, and not on Dynamite since way back in August, almost a whole year ago. Now, some major changes are coming to AEW and its creative and what we see on screen. There is a ban list that was sent out company-wide, and that is supposed to make wrestling safer and cut down on the risks associated with spots, the crowd, and medical situations. Specifically, the document was sent out that outright banned unprotected chair shots to the head, shots to the back of the head, buckle bombs, blind moves backwards into the turnbuckle, the fencing response, which happens when you have a seizure spells, spitting, bleeding in the crowd, weapons or projectiles in the crowd, taking drinks or food from guests in the crowd, or physical contact with the crowd, as well as noting that nothing with blood on it should be thrown into the crowd. Now, there's a second part to this list. This part needs prior approval to do the spot. The following is pulled from the list verbatim, and remember, these spots need approval prior to the match. So spots and bumps on the ring apron and outside, tables, ladders, chair spots in and out of the ring. Chairs are only allowed with padding. Any elevated spot outside of the barricade, dives, ladder spots on stages around the arena and other places outside of the ring. All pile drivers, tombstone variations, including sit-down pile drivers, inverted, poison hurricanranas, and vertebreakers. High-risk dives on top rope moves such as 450s, 630s, double moonsaults, SSPs, etc. Intentional bleeding of any sort, not just blading. Throwing people through over ring steps, commentary tables, bell tables, or guardrails, barricades. Weapons usage, chairs, pipes, kendo sticks, hammers, ring bells, bats, chains, etc. Title belts. Turnbuckles, skewers, barbed wire, and any other sharp puncturing objects. powders, aerosol sprays, or liquids, throwing any weapon or objects, chairs, etc., choking, strangling with hands or weapons, or hanging spots, injury spots or angles, whether or not medical is involved, called to the ring, all physicality in the crowd or crowd brawling, any physicality involving referees, managers, etc., celebrities, or special guests. It's worth reiterating that all of these moves are the ones that require approval, while the group mentioned before are the ones that are completely prohibited. It's weird because at a certain point, everything that I've just named, whether it is prohibited or it needs prior approval, we have seen on AEW television in one way or another. In certain matches, we've seen 9 of these types of things take place. So it's interesting that this ban list has been put out there, and now that we kind of know. This AEW star is reportedly sidelined with a major injury. Per Tony Khan, Mark Briscoe is currently injured and is unable to be medically cleared to compete at Ring of Honor's upcoming pay-per-view, Death Before Dishonor. Tony Khan wrote on Twitter, due to an injury reported this week, Mark Briscoe cannot be cleared to wrestle at Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor next Friday, 7/21. We all wish Success Co-Chicken the very best in his recovery. In a separate report from Sean Ross Sapp from Fightful, those close to Mark Briscoe have confirmed that he suffered a serious knee injury and would likely require surgery. The main event for Death Before Dishonor was originally announced as the ROH World Champion Claudio Castagnoli taking on Mark Briscoe after Briscoe was encouraged to challenge Claudio by Eddie Kingston. Maybe Eddie Kingston gets slotted in and takes on Claudio. We'll see what happens. But that's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes, my brother.
Man, that was stacked. Woo! Lots of good information. Lots of good things going down in the world of wrestling. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamR_STROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Anywhere that you enjoy your favorite audio content, type in Detroit Sports Podcast and our content will find you. Kudos to Sam Roberts for showing love. The popular WWE broadcaster retweeted our eye emoji. Obviously, he's coming to town and he's going to do a podcast. So if you're down to if you like live wrestling podcasts, $30, Sam Roberts will get you in and at the Detroit Comedy House, I believe, and you can kind of take in a show before SummerSlam. So check it out on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. Sam Roberts showing the Detroit Sports Podcast a little bit of love. And he's talented, and you can enjoy some entertainment if you're down in Detroit. Always enjoy breaking down the world of wrestling. Man, so cuz if you're interested in entertainment, hijinks, hilarity, you know where to go. Detroit Sports Podcast. Yeah. And that's the spot that everybody knows you come to check out and learn about everything and break down everything in the world of Detroit sports. So we've talked to you for the last 60 minutes and we enjoyed our time, but podcasting time is over and we'll come back next week for another great edition of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast.